Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me as we take a look at your weekend forecast for President's Day weekend, which is obviously going to mostly focus on a significant, very significant winter storm that's going to come as a couple of rounds, basically start as a big slug of snow that's going to then change to sleet and freezing rain and going to really be a mess after some snow. In terms of it's going to not be great for skiing on certainly after today and tomorrow. Good for skiing. Sunday will not be good. It'll be sleeting or freezing rain most of the day. Monday, it's going to be cold. We'll see how much they're going to have to groom big time to kind of get things back. We're going to freeze up. Monday's not looking amazing. The rest of the week next week looks good. And it will be good for base building. Bases have come up, but in terms of making sure that any of those, we don't have huge base depths everywhere across the Northeast now. So this will definitely help that. It's unfortunately going to mix, so it's not going to be just snow, which would have been ideal. But let's take a quick look here at satellite imagery, and this is going to get us started. So still a lot to be ironed out in the details here as this giant storm and series of storms has come on shore across the West Coast. And is slowly starting to take shape east of the Rockies. It is not, the surface low pressure hasn't redeveloped, so what happens is you get these big storms, they move across, the upper level energy does make it across the Rockies, the surface energy gets interrupted basically, the surface low pressure systems, and then they reform east of the Rockies when this happens. And so for a real classic nor'easter, normally you would take, this would all be a little bit further south and it would ride up the coast, all the way up the coast. That would be like the most classic. Sometimes you get a system that kind of rides to the west of the Appalachians and then transfers its energy to the coast. That also is, it's a slightly different form, but basically that's a nor'easter. This one is going to do that, but it's going to transfer its energy late. And when that happens, that gives enough chance for some warm air to move in, especially at the lower levels of the atmosphere. Not right at the surface, but a little bit higher up than that. And that's when we get that rain that changes to that snow that changes to sleet and freezing rain. This one will be kind of like the storm we just had on yesterday, but it will be much more significant, more precipitation, longer duration, just kind of a supersized version of yesterday's storm. Lots of details. Yeah. So let's take a look at what that means. Here's radar. You can see we're just starting to see the storm come together across basically across the plains here, and we still have lots of kind of upper level energy to kind of move its way in. But what happens, the Gulf is fully open to tap for moisture here, and this is basically, there's no split flow really with this. This is basically a full latitude storm. And so we do, though, if you've noticed, if you've been outside this morning, we have been pushing cold air from Canada into the Northeast, which is why we're going to start as snow. Going to be fluffy snow to start. Tomorrow afternoon and evening will be fluffy snow. There'll be no hint that we're going to change over. And actually, temperatures stay quite chilly. So even if we get sleet and freezing rain, it's not going to be with temperatures hovering in the of 30, 31. It's probably going to be temperatures in the 27, 28, 29 degree range. Yeah, the cold, especially at the surface, except for maybe Route 7 corridor, it's a little easier to warm up the ground over there just because of the terrain, basically. Here's the upper level, and you can see here's that big significant low pressure system across the west. Here is what's left of yesterday's storm. There's a little bit of split flow now, but as this system up in Alaska also kind of catches up some of that energy, this is going to become a full latitude storm. And it's going to mean that we can really, that it is going to be a significant storm with lots of moisture involved in it. Let's take a look at those temperatures. You can see how we're tapping the cold and we're reinforcing the cold here across the Northeast. It's very cold across central Canada, right, central northern Canada right now. Again, this isn't unusual. It's always, well, not always, but it's often very cold. But that's even for Canada, minus 40, even in northern Canada. That's no joke. That's real cold. And that is kind of, we're tapping a little bit of that, and it's this battleground, right? Because you can see this morning, lows were, it's not exactly warm, but we do have, a lot of 40s, and during the day, we're getting up to the 50s and the 60s, even some 70s across the Gulf Coast. And it's that battleground as we start to turn the corner towards a little bit of a spring, not spring in the Northeast, but spring in the Southeast. That battleground, it becomes a place where we can get these significant storms. That's why we often get bigger snowstorms in February and sometimes in March than we do during January. Sometimes we can get them in January too, but oftentimes in January, we're just cold. So let's take a look at what this looks like as it evolves out. So here we start Saturday afternoon. We're all snow. We're snow through Saturday night, and it's really not until we get into Sunday morning that we start to see some of these purples and pinks move their way in. We may get some the precipitation on Sunday could be a little more showery in nature. We may kind of have a dry slot move in with the system, and that'll mean we'll get periods of sleet, periods of freezing rain, and then periods of not much happening. And especially as the precipitation gets lighter, that's when the snow will be most likely to definitely change over whatever's left of it. And it looks like the changeover will happen basically throughout, even north of kind of where I forecast up into northern Vermont. But we're in this pretty good band of snow for quite some time. And so this is why we are going to accumulate a decent amount of snow before we change over. And so basically, it will mean good for snow bases, not great for like powder skiing, unfortunately. So, but by midweek next week, by Tuesday, Wednesday, if you're up for, a lot of kids are on vacation this week. If you're up for the week, conditions will be real nice as they get a chance to grow and make a little bit of snow on top of it. It's going to be cold all of next week. So that's the silver lining. Obviously, we would have looked for something a little bit better than this. But let's take a look at what the actual snowfall forecast looks like. Let me pop myself up so I can kind of point to some things. Generally, we're talking 4 to 6 inches in the lower elevations. Route 7 up to Rutland even, basically 4 to 6 inches, and then 6 to 8 for the higher elevations. This is a little hard to determine because changeover is going to make the difference. I think there's almost no chance we stay all snow. Had we stayed all snow, we'd be talking numbers in the 10 to 20 inch range, but we're not going to stay all snow, and the snow is going to get pushed down by the sleet. So you may, at the time of changeover, be at 8, maybe even 10 inches in some of these spots, and then sleet falls on top of it. And even though it's still precipitating, the snow, if you go out and measure it, it actually is condensed down. So yeah, there's been I know I've talked to a lot of people around here. If you've been on a weather app around here, a lot of the models, a lot of the weather apps are saying, even a couple days ago when it was pretty obvious it was going to be a decent amount of mixing with the storm, we're saying 12 to 24 inches and things like that. The problem with those, with the simple weather apps, is they're just generated based on a computer. And so what happens is with this changeover kind of thing, how they determine snowfall totals usually, for most, every app is a little different, but basically they take a model output or an average of model outputs. And for snowfall, they take however much liquid's going to fall, which in this case is like 1.25 to 2 inches of precipitation, and they multiply that number by 10, and they just assume that all falls as snow. Now, that is a really coarse way to kind of determine what's going to happen, because obviously if we mix sleet is even wet snow can be down in the 5 or 6 inches of snow to 1 inch of liquid equivalent. Really powdery snow like we got last Sunday can be 25 inches of snow to 1 inch of liquid equivalent. But the weather apps tend to just base it entirely on at least until they're a day or two out when they can grab some information from the National Weather Service. They basically just determine it based on this simple math equation. It doesn't actually tell the real story in a situation like this when we're going to get a lot of sleet. Sleet is like 2 inches of sleet equals 1 inch of liquid equivalent. So sleet just doesn't build up. And actually, normally sleet falls after we've gotten some snow and it just compacts the snow. So anyways, 6 to 8 inches for a lot of us. This will be hard to move. It's not going to be fun to plow. It's going to be terrible on the road. Sunday will be awful driving because that sleet is it just kind of slides around. It's hard to plow out of the way, and it will get icy with a little bit of freezing rain mixed in there too. So if you don't have to drive on Sunday, I would advise against it. It's just going to be bad. Saturday evening, it'll be snowing, but you can get around in the snow. You just got to be careful. Roads will be snowpacked by Saturday evening if you're headed out to dinner or something like that. And basically Monday morning before things really start to clear up, because we could precipitation could continue all the way into the evening on Sunday. I do want to talk about storm details. This will give you an idea of timing. So snow begins between 2 and 4 p.m. It mixes with sleet and freezing rain somewhere so that's 2 and 4 p.m. on Saturday. Sunday morning, sometime between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., we transition. First transition happens in the Bennington area, and then it kind of pushes north and east. By 10 a.m., I think, and certainly by noon at the very latest, everywhere up through even northeastern Windsor County, which will be the last to change over, will have transitioned over. Precipitation ends, though, not till 7 to 9 p.m. Now, once we get to the mix, I think by about noon, The precipitation gets a little more showery in nature, which means, but it could be heavy when it comes through. Kind of bursts of decent amount of sleet and then nothing for a little while, or freezing rain, and in between you might get freezing drizzle. That's why the roads will continue to be tough. But precipitation doesn't truly come to an end until like 7 to 9 p.m. So this is almost a 30-hour duration storm. It's a long duration event. Travel will be difficult Saturday evening and extremely difficult Sunday. Like I said, if you don't have to drive on Sunday, don't. A freeze will occur Sunday night, kind of like what just happened last night. So snow will need to be cleared by Sunday evening, or it's going to be a bear to clear on Sunday evening. It's going to be like moving concrete on Monday morning. So that's, unfortunately, this is not what everybody wants to hear, but it is reality. So today, still a little breezy today, not as breezy as last night, but still windy. Temperatures in the low to mid 20s. Overnight tonight, we clear out and we get quite chilly as the winds die down a little bit. We're down in the low single numbers. Tomorrow afternoon snow starting about 2 p.m. Snow holds overnight, and it is fluffy snow to begin with temperatures in the upper teens basically for the time it snows. By Sunday morning, we're starting to change that mix over, and it's a wintry mix throughout the day on Sunday. It is pretty chilly. Most of us stay in the mid to upper 20s, even with that wintry mix. It's going to be kind of a cold wintry mix. It gets breezy overnight Sunday night, and then kind of turns breezy to windy by late overnight into Monday morning. So Monday, we'll probably have a wind advisory like we did last night. Winds will be similar on Monday, if not even maybe a little bit stronger than today, Monday night or Monday during the day. So in terms of skiing on Monday, I would hold off in the morning. It's going to be rough. There's going to be wind holds. It's going to be cold with temperatures in the teens, and wind chills will probably be well below zero. If you can hold off by midday or a little bit or later in the morning, there'll still be wind holds, but temperatures will come up a little bit. It'll give a chance for maybe a little bit of recovery from the ski areas, but this one's going to take a day or so to recover, unfortunately. Again, wish I had better news, but that's the reality. It's going to be breezy still Monday night into Tuesday. We're going to be down in the single numbers, but wind chills will be way below zero. It's going to feel real cold Monday night into Tuesday. And then we move to a more tranquil pattern for the rest of the week, thankfully, as we have been very hectic here weather-wise lately. Weekend highlights today is windy with seasonably cold. A large winter storm moves in Saturday afternoon through Sunday. The storm begins as light to moderate snow Saturday afternoon and night. Snow will mix with sleet and freezing rain on Sunday. Monday will be windy and cold. I do want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. Yeah, thank you to my patrons. They really help support what I do here at the West River Weather Guy. I've had a few of you over the last week or two as we've had some of these storms, so I appreciate my new patrons and the ones who've been supporting the channel for a long time. If you're interested in becoming a patron, there's a link in the description below. It helps just provide for all the maps and things like that so these forecasts can happen. And also, I do want to give remind you that if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel before, I'd encourage you to do so. Helps make sure you don't miss any of my videos. If you can give a like and things like that, it helps make sure that people see these. If you have questions, ask them in the YouTube comments. I try to get back to those with answers about if you've got specific questions and things like that. So yeah, thank you and appreciate you. And I'll be back on Monday with a look at your work week forecast.